Welcome to Inside the Music. I'm your host, Stereo Russ, and what a day! What a day! I'm usually in a studio. Today, I'm in a makeshift studio, and for a very, 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 very special reason, we've got Warren Huart here. Produce like a pro.
Oh,
Warren,
you're very kind, Russell.
my gosh, I can't tell you milestones, things that you dream of, and this is certainly.
Oh, your stuff is fantastic. You're being very, very kind.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Warren. And for those that don't know Warren, you're gonna get to know him quite well today. We're gonna chat a little bit about who he is, where he came from. We're gonna talk production. We're gonna talk content creation, and if we have time, we'll just fire some questions at you. How does that sound, Warren?
I like all of the above. Whatever makes sense to you.
Right on, right on. So I'll tell people a little bit about who you are because maybe it's easier than someone saying on their own. Warren is a multi-platinum winning record producer, musician, and composer, recording engineer based in LA. However, I know that you're currently in the UK.
Yeah, as of today, yeah. Yep. We do a snizzle ton of traveling. We were in Poland until Sunday, for a little bit. I think before that, probably we did some filming at Abbey Road, so we're back in London for that. And Germany, we were at Alesia. Oh, we went to Berlin to do a masterclass with Moses Schneider, and then we went to Neumann. And yeah, if I went work backwards over the last couple of months, lots of different traveling. But that Produce Like a Pro is all about bringing people together. I watched a video this morning with this guitar YouTuber, and I'm blanking on his name. I apologize. But he made a point about YouTube forces you into being a niche. Now, some people like being a niche. They have a one message. I think the thing about Produce Like a Pro that's always been important to us is that we are inclusive of all genres of music. As the great quote goes, there's only two types of music, good and bad. So, I'm quite comfortable doing a death metal song, a punk song, a folk song, something orchestrated, an hip hop song, an R&B song, a straight ahead rock song. I like featuring pretty much anything as long as it's really good and talking about it and breaking it down and, all the fun stuff that we do.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Produce Like a Pro started, I want to say a decade ago. Is that accurate?
I think we just hit 10 years. We didn't make a big deal about it, but we should have done.
I think I saw
Yeah.
people make a big deal about it in the chats.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, yeah, more than you did. And I think to date you're like close to 800,000 subs, which is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that to add to that, and I really appreciate it. To add to that, I think what it is Christian Kohler is a good friend of ours and a business partner, and he has an amazing metal channel called the Kohler Audio Cult. And we have all these different guys and girls that we work with, and so we'll have similar audiences, but it all comes together. So it's 800,000 people, but probably 10 different genres of 80,000 each. You know what I mean? It's like we're
Yeah.
very it's very inclusive. We go to New York, walk around AES, and we get stopped by people doing hip hop and dance music there. In LA, it'll be a little more rock orientated. And of course, in Nashville, it might be country slash rock. You get my point. It's like no matter where you are, we speak to lots of different people. And to be honest, that's really important because the best music ever, as you know, is a blend of other genres that come together and create, as Muddy Waters said, the blues had a baby and they named it rock and roll.
I have a question for you about that. So when you're doing your own mixing, producing, are there certain genres that you actually it takes longer for you to finish a song because you're really enjoying it and you want to get into it?
I mean, I love all kinds of things. My favorite music, well, it's hard to say what my favorite music to listen to is because I do like quite extreme stuff. I do like,
What
what I
what,
mean is
what do you mean
I can
extreme?
listen,
Yeah.
well, I can listen to something simplistic relatively. Like if you said my top 10 songs, depending on the day, they'll probably change, but they can be a combination of like Working Class Hero by John Lennon or Redemption Song by Bob Marley. But at the same time, they can be Bohemian Rhapsody or Discipline by King Crimson. You know what I mean? It's like I can King Crimson I will listen to, especially those three magical records they did, when it was Fripp with Tony Levin and Bill Bruford and Edgar Ballou. And when they were doing that stuff, Beat and Discipline and Three of a Perfect Pair,
Yeah.
um, some of the stuff that's really mathematical, at least to some people, is really calms me down and keeps me really focused. My brain likes that kind of complexity. But I can listen to Redemption Song and it brings me to tears. So it's an interesting sort of question because I feel like also I get asked a variation of your question when people are talking about people say to me like, how do you work on music you don't like? Well, when I work on music I don't like, by the end of it I love it. You know what I mean? I bring everything I can to it to make it as exciting and interesting and fulfilling as possible. And there is something really rewarding about working with artists that have great ideas, lots of talent in the ideas, but haven't yet learned all the chops and skills to like put it across. And then me as a producer, that's
Yeah.
my job. It's my
And
job
the,
to get it out of them.
and the, and
And
the, and the look in their eyes or after you putting your stuff on there must just be a great feeling to see.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. It is. And the most rewarding thing is when you work with artists and you end up doing two or three albums, rather than just the one and done off they go, or the one single. There's so many artists I've worked with where I end up working on multiple albums in their career. And that is a testament to, growing, helping them grow, growing with them, developing, helping develop them, helping develop stuff together. It becomes then a true, you know, production relationship, I suppose, artist producer relationship. And and it can be of any genre. It really can. It can be so wide. So it's a difficult question to answer because I feel like everything I do, I sort of end up falling in love with. And the great thing, of course, is I enjoy when it's just like a singer that comes in that maybe barely plays an instrument but has an amazing melody and incredible lyric and is still trying to figure out what the chord sequences, and then I can get in there and start playing instruments and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's a blessing, when you get to play guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, mandolins, ukuleles, sing backgrounds, co-write the song, produce it, engineer, mix it. And to me, that's like, it's like I get to do all my favorite things at once.
Well, it's awesome. Like obviously, like in watching your content, I can really see how much you thoroughly enjoy like being with people and helping people out. And obviously, that was probably like the genesis of Produce Like a Pro. And I watched your first few videos,
Oh,
and
wow.
other than I did a bit of research, I watched a few, and I have to say, because I've been watching you for years, yes, angles have changed and editing has changed, but your core energy has been similar. And I want to know, like, how close is where you're at today to where you thought it would be 10 years ago?
That's a good question. I mean, I feel like it's sort of the same. I actually, like you, I actually recently went back and watched some of the early ones, and there was some stuff in there I absolutely adored. I think one of the problems with doing this for a long time is, we have 2,800 and something videos. Um, I had Joe, I asked Joe Carroll recently, for instance, to do a low end mixing video, which he did. That's a great video. And he's like, why do you want me to do this? So I was like, well, nobody's seen you mix low end. He goes, well, I do a lot of the same stuff that you do. In fact, most of us do. Most of our professionals, come to some of the same conclusions, most of the same conclusions. And I was like, yeah, but you'll give a different interpretation. And I said, and I have done 8 low end mixing videos. All of them have got over 100,000 views each. It's a subject that people want to know. And even though a lot of the stuff crosses and I come up with some of the same information, maybe repeated in different videos, when Joe does it, somebody who enjoys Joe's personality, gravitates towards it and goes, I want to learn from this guy or that girl or that, you know what I mean? It's super important to me that we are always giving back. And to go back to your original point, I do realize when I go back to some of the early ones, because when I started doing it, there wasn't really any. I mean, there's not very many professionals doing it now, but there wasn't any professionals then. Dave had a thing, Pensado had his thing, and he had like a really big channel. For me, it seems so daunting. I think he had like 106,000 subscribers 10 years ago. And I was just like, I'm sure you know what I mean. That looked like, oh my
Yeah,
God,
never. That's never gonna happen.
never going to happen. Yeah. And I enjoyed his videos and, I thought it was great. But I noticed with most people that do this and the most successful ones give away small pieces of information and make it bite-sized and there's a lot of these kind of thumbnails and I'm shocked and about something which nobody in their right mind would ever be
No one's
shocked about.
talked about that. Yeah,
Yeah, no one's actually shocked about that. I couldn't believe what
I
was one
could.
I saw yesterday. Something made it sound like they were going to give up working on it. I'm giving up this, or I'm no longer doing it. I can't do this anymore. I mean, if I did a video and that was the title, I can't do this anymore, dot, 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 it will get 100,000 views pretty quickly. We all know that because people are going to click on it. But I just, and maybe a couple of times I've crossed the line to my own thing and made it sound like a little bit more interesting than the stuff. But to me, it always just seemed like the way to do this was to just give away a lot of information.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're not interrupting at all.
That you really struck a chord with me because I'm doing my thing here at my show Inside the Music, and I do clips, and I have had two that have gone quote unquote viral, and both of
That's
them
pretty well.
had kind of a potentially a controversial feel to it. And I wasn't trying to be controversial, but it
Which
did.
was the one that was controversial?
It was like one of them was about guitar players in the 90s versus now.
Oh, I don't. I mean, I probably saw it, but I didn't remember it being controversial. Guitar players in the 90s and now. Well, I'm interested in interviewing you about this. So what exactly was controversial about it?
I think the idea was that like I was just trying to see because the person I was interviewing is a guitar professor. And
Okay,
so him and I growing up in the 90s, like the approach that you would have to guitar versus say
right.
now, like do people have a different approach based on the information that's out there, technology and this and that. And maybe that wasn't controversial as much as it was there was a form for debate.
Right.
Um, but I find something that might be controversial or might be negative in tone will lead to like more views. So I
Right.
kind of like what you're saying, like you could do something where it's like, I notice I click on things that are like things you shouldn't do while mixing. And I'm like, well, it's like a negative energy to get me in. And I don't love that. I don't love that about the algorithm. So I do appreciate that you like, I think that's one thing that I gravitate to your work about is that it doesn't have that lean. Like it feels honest. It feels, warm. It feels open and receptive.
Thank you very much. I mean, it is an interesting thing, because you do this, you do YouTube and social media stuff, and we realize that is how all of the big channels were founded, was all based on shock and awe, versions of it, hating on something, ranting about something. But it's really difficult because I know a lot of people that do the rant videos, but I also know that they don't believe what they're ranting about. And
Oh,
oh yeah, yeah. Well, they know they have to take a selective piece of the information rather than present the whole picture. Because you present the whole picture, the balance always, like anything in life, politics or whatever. As soon as you put a balanced thing, there's loads of places that people agree on, don't they? But if you just keep it to one little piece that 50% agree and 50% don't disagree in, that creates that creates a success because half the people are going to be like, "Rah," and the other people are going to be, yeah. And
totally.
that's the skill in the algorithm, I think, for social media. I just can't do that. It has to be nuanced to me because there's a phrase I love, and you may have heard it, and it's called "look for the similarities and not the differences." And I was reading another person this morning was talking about this, about their philosophy was to always try and find the common ground because, and I've used this analogy before. I did a lovely video. We were very blessed to go to Fame Studios and do some filming there and create a course. It was lovely. And of course, we heard the story of Dwayne Allman, who had driven there and was sitting outside, living in the parking lot, in the car park outside the front of the studio, dying to get in there and record because all his favorite artists were recording in there. And after a period of time, like a week or so, the owner felt sorry for him, invited him in, and he came in and played. And he played with some local like R&B soul artists, and of course was brilliant. And I wouldn't say the rest is history, but it was sort of the beginning of I suppose an affirmation for him. And he and his brother had been struggling in a band by then, and then they kind of reformed, got it back together, and the rest is history. Lovely story. So we did a whole video on Dwayne Allman, and the audience loved it. It did 100 or 200,000 views almost within a couple of weeks. So it was a very popular video. And a little bit after that, most people, of course, would then see the niche in their channel and do Leonard Skinner the week after that. You
Right.
know where I'm going.
Yes. Yeah. Keep going. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
You know where I'm going, and which is fine. I haven't yet done, and we haven't yet done Leonard Skinner, but we will because Leonard Skinner are bleeding amazing, and they wrote some incredible songs. But my mind didn't go there. My mind went to, ooh, I've got my audience. His ears are spiked up here. I want to throw him a curveball. So we did a video on Fela Kuti. We did
I
a
love
video on Afrobeat because Afrobeat's really big at the moment, and I thought it'd be really nice for people to understand where it came from and how 40 years ago there was this absolutely incredible guy called Fela Kuti. Of course, that's Fima Kuti, and I'm sure you, or if you don't, but anyway, the point is it was a good opportunity to get it in front of an audience that wouldn't necessarily watch it, and I enjoy that. And I feel like I also want to be educated from the guy that loves Southern rock that I don't know, that goes a bit deeper. You know what I mean? I want to be educated in all kinds of ways, shapes, or form. Because when I listen to Blackfoot or Leonard Skinner or the Allman Brothers or something like that, I always hear something that really interests me and it's really super exciting. But if I listen to, Fela Kuti, I hear stuff that excites me and is really super interested. And then when I put that two together, then we get music that changes, kicks down doors and removes barriers to entry because people are coming from different directions. And which is why one of my favorite videos we've ever done was the history of two-tone, because it allowed people to understand in the late 70s where Britain was going through such terrible austerity, and there was 3-day weeks and 4 days weeks, and the ambulance drivers were on strike, and the fire brigade was on strike. The army were like servicing all this. It was a mess in Britain. And two-tone was punk rock kids and Jamaican reggae and ska fans who got together and created music that was a cross section of those two very different kind of communities on the surface. They got together and they created two-tone, and it was amazing. And it was the first time, I think, at least in my humble opinion, that the country was able to kind of look at itself and go, oh, okay, because these artists weren't underground or they were top 10 singles. I remember the Specials being at number one when Britain in the late 70s was a massive, massive force in the music industry. So here you had revolutionary music of punk rock kids and Jamaican kids getting together and creating music together that really changed the landscape. So, yes, I don't think I have an ulterior motive necessarily as such. I'm not trying to preach or change anything. I'm just trying to share the stuff that I absolutely love. And yeah, I think we're just blessed to be able to do this and to have a platform and share this music that we all love is not only huge and wonderful and fulfilling, it also helps shape, because look, we know that some of the big channels, the best way to be big is to focus in on stuff that's already successful, big famous rock stars, and talk about them and talk about their music because there's millions and millions of people out there that are going to watch it, And I do have a bit of that. We have had those people on our channel multiple times, but I also like Fela Kuti
Yeah. Yeah.
and Two Tone and lots of other stuff. Anyway, I'm waffling on. I'll
Oh,
let you
no,
take over.
no, please. I'm like, where do I go from here? Like every which direction. Um,
Please.
Honestly, I think what you're doing is great, and I think one thing that I find similar with mine is that the choices you make for content really does tell a story. Um,
Right.
so whoever I have on as guests, If I lean a certain direction, I'm not going a different direction. Like I think it's actually really important the decisions that we make of the content that we're making and how that's actually not only shaping kind of our channel, but it's also shaping society in a way. And so for you, you do teaching, interviewing, historical storytelling. Do you just kind of wake up one day and go, "We're doing this," or is it a little more premeditated than that?
Um, well, stuff brews. So I was looking down on my laptop down there. Stuff brews. So I have like tabs and notes, and I've been watching a few compression videos, and we've done a lot of compression videos, for instance. And I watched a
I,
couple other people's
I've
compression.
seen many of them.
Sorry. And I was sort of reviewing them. So there's this percolating idea about doing like a kind of be all and end all ultimate compression video.
I love
I
that.
watched a couple that were being sold as be all and end all, and they were pretty close. They were really good, and they were definitely one of them was very academic, um, and then one of them was more opinionated about what they thought would sound good on this, that, and the other, and this is why. And I thought, well, what like everything that we do, I'm just thinking, where's the middle point? Where's the middle point where it's super, super educational, very factually, you're right, but also brings in experience? I
Mhm.
recently went to Muse, what's it called? Muso.ai,
What is this?
and yeah, started looking up a lot of the people in the space. And we both realized that most people in this space have never actually done the thing that they're teaching. That's
Mm.
true. And we're very blessed. I mean, I'm here looking and it says geez, about 1,200 credits on albums and singles and stuff like that. So I feel like I want to be able to go and give information on how something is technically, but marry it with like what would it sound good on in an experience of having recorded acoustic guitar a few thousand times. Why would I use this microphone? Why in that position? That kind of stuff. So to me, that's where my brain goes. So it's a long answer because essentially what I do is I have lots of tabs open. I love Apple Notes. So, if I open up my phone here and just there's so many.
Just a
It's ridiculous.
thousand, just thousands. Yeah.
Yeah, like just all these different ideas. We're covering my favorite song at the moment.
Can I know what it is, or is that a secret?
I mean,
Okay.
if you watch any of my videos, what do you think my favorite song is?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay, you got me there. You got me there.
You know who my favorite band are?
No, I don't. I don't.
Well, if you know who my favorite band are, you'll immediately know who my favorite song is. My
Can,
favorite band is Queen. So we're
okay, fair.
doing. I went around and we watched a few Bohemian Rhapsody covers, and there were some really good ones. There were some really really good ones, and then we were like, you know what, we're gonna go for it. So Mark Martell, Mark, he was a lot of the voice of Freddie in the movie. He sung the stuff that was a cappella that they didn't have other recordings of. And phenomenal singer, absolutely phenomenal. I did an album with him or an EP with him, album, 7 tracks. I don't know what you call that, seven, sort of a mini album, big EP.
I just had that
And
conversation with someone the other day. What is 5 to 7 songs? There's no name for it.
it's a weird one, isn't it? Because when I was a little kid, you could buy albums that were like 30 minutes long and they might have 7 songs on them, sometimes six, sometimes three on one side and one long one on the other. So it was basically when iTunes came along, they wanted to do 10 songs for $10.
Right.
So suddenly everybody started recording
And
10 3-minute 20 songs,
yeah.
and $10, 10 songs, because they wanted to be able to sell it as a whole and individually. So it
Yeah.
changed the game. But before that, albums could be double, triple, quadruple, single, short, long, medium, whatever artistically made sense. But that's a whole other conversation.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah. You don't have to go down like that conversation on my show comes up pretty much every episode. And as I'm editing the clips, I'm like, I've got to get off that track. I've got to move into something else. It's
it's,
because it's
it's
kind
a
of like
tough
topic
one.
du jour.
All of these business conversations are really interesting because people have like people have really honest to good places that they come from, like, but then they miss the basic understanding of how the music industry used to be, and thinking that it was some magical place where people kind of got picked up dragged over and then dropped in this big pit of money, and suddenly everybody was dressed by stylists
Isn't
and
that how it worked? I thought that's how it worked. No?
exactly. Everybody thinks that. Everybody thinks that, and it just was never like that. It was never like that. Even with the biggest bands I worked with, and even some young bands that were up and coming that got signed and did well, it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Things kind of happened. And, if you want to just base it on America, which obviously being the biggest market, the great American public decided whether your band was good or bad. It was as simple as that. And you could market it any way, shape, or form. I mean, a big example of that would probably be like emo rock, which had some biggish artists.
Yeah.
Big-ish is the answer, though. The industry moved towards emo before really the fan base was ready,
Mm.
or ever really. They kind of switched gears, started just signing bands like that and putting them out. And I'm not going to talk bad about any bands, but a lot of those bands barely got gold records when traditional rock bands, more traditional like Soundgarden, stuff like that, were still selling 2 million albums plus. So, it's the idea that the industry was this sort of like, you know, was telling
We
us what to listen to just isn't true. You can be the greatest band in the world and put it out and all look super, super pretty. But if people don't like it, they don't like it.
yeah,
Um,
I think
I'm
that
just scraping the surface. I don't, if we started this conversation,
yeah,
yeah.
you're never gonna be there. I do want to talk about your Produce Like a Pro a little bit more if that's cool.
Please.
Okay, so I like obviously production is a big thing, and it's tying into, you were a musician first, and then
Yep.
you got into production, and then you got into this YouTube thing. And we kind of talked about, it kind of popping off for you and becoming a thing. And so you're looking for your next project. So you're looking for your next project, and then you decide to whip this thing up.
Ah, look at you. You got the book.
I've got the book. I'm on page 88. Page 88 of this monster. Do you have it? Yeah.
Behind, yeah. I always forget to kind of point these things out.
No, I got you. That's my job. Okay. So, Warren Huart, Jerry Hammock, who's from Toronto, by the way, and I'm from outside of Toronto, so shout out. It
Wonderful.
honestly, one great book, great book. I just I don't even know where to start. I don't want to get into it too much like into the details, but I just want to say like top to bottom, like this thing I'm reading it like it's a novel. Like I was expecting it to be a lot more technical, and it is technical, but there's a lot of storytelling in it. There's a lot of little tips and tricks. Very much is like I'm reading it as if you're speaking it. So I want to ask you two questions.
Ah, that's wonderful.
Was this the hardest thing you've ever had to do?
No, because I had an incredible co-writer. So I'd be lying. I will say it took 3 years to do.
Okay, that was my next question. So how much of it was like pre-written and you putting it together? How much of it was like, I don't know, a larger hill? I just hear that writing a book's impossible. That's all. I just want you to fill in the gaps.
It's really, really difficult. But Jerry, your fellow Torontonian, is that right?
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Your, although if I knew anything about Toronto, which I do, it's not Toronto, it's Toronto, Toronto,
You're
as
two
you
for
know.
two. You're 2 for 2, Ward.
Yeah, well, now you're getting into like we used to go for the drive through beer stores and get a
You
twofer.
got it. Yeah, you nailed it.
Only Canadians will understand what a twofer is. For those of you who are uninitiated, a twofer is 24 beers.
That's
I
right.
would like a twofer, eh?
And
And
you
then
and there are
coin.
drive-throughs.
Yeah. Oh no, they're beer drive-throughs. Yeah, I remember doing them to get a twofer, eh? And the other one is the coins, the loonie and the toonie.
Looney and Tooney. Yeah, you can't beat that. Actually, you can beat that because they're kind of a pain. But anyways,
Yeah.
Toronto's fantastic. Jerry obviously then is fantastic.
He's
Um,
wonderful, absolutely great guy. So, I mean, basically, we we had our remit was to write a better book than one that was out there. So
Classic.
we looked at all the great books, and I know them all. You probably know them all as well. Most people that do what we do, have read them or used them as manuals ever since. And it was like there's so many great books out there and so much great stuff. So we had to do something that was at least as good as those, if not, frankly, better. So we had to like incorporate all the information that was known. We had to make sure that they were modernized
Yep.
without moving on from the past where necessary. We made sure that classic recording techniques, plus, of course, I'm very, very personally blessed to know a million producer engineers and mixers, probably, I mean, probably literally hundreds of thousands. But as far as like the well known ones, a lot, a
Right.
lot of really well known producer engineers and mixers. So it's not just me, it's the culmination of, a couple of thousand guys and girls information passed through me. Jerry was, as you know, or if you don't know, he wrote the Beatles recording books. I think, well, not sitting behind me. And so, what he is really, really, one of the things he's very good at many things, but one of the things he's really good at is, of course, assembling information and putting it together in a way that is very compelling.
Hmm.
So he was able, with my guys as well, because what my guys did is they went through video content and we brought out, like, we need to go through this video, we need to pull out information from this, and this. Because I would
Right.
go and interview somebody, I'd be like, oh my goodness, what that person said there was total genius. So they go back and they script the video, we'd pull out the things, we'd take some of these great moments. If you go through the book, you'll see quotes. Those were all pulled from videos, but also, pulling information and going, okay, let's expand upon that. That person talked about this technique or that technique. Okay, that's great. So I'd expand upon that. And then, of course, endless conversations with Jerry. Poor old Jerry. We would record stuff and then go through it, and he did all the heavy lifting. He did the heavy lifting. He basically assembled all of the information that was given to him and made it coherent.
Wow.
A lot of the stuff I was giving him, you would probably, as an engineer, understand, but then it's also got to be, assimilated into a way that makes sense. So, it was not the most difficult thing because it took two minds to create, and then a lot of help from a lot of really great people.
Yeah.
Uh,
I thought it was great, and I love that. I can't imagine how much like editing, like shaving down you'd have to do to make it coherent and cohesive. It's like that must be
yeah, I think it ended up as 475 pages. It was in its, it was in the final. I'm doing the in quote, a potential, a final version, 525 pages. So we managed to shave another 10% from that, another 50 off of that.
sure.
With the help of Richard Oliver, who got in there and helped edit it, who does a lot of work with us as well. Richard did an amazing job. So it was just great to work with really, really talented people and obviously have access to thousands and thousands and thousands of hours worth of information that we've accumulated with people over the last 10 years. Plus, the fact that I have been making music and getting paid from it since the age of 16 years old. And so from touring in bands to A&Ring to managing bands to producing, engineer, writing, playing various different instruments. Well, this is all I've ever really done. I've done another job at some point, but this was the only thing that I've
You
ever
can
done full time.
you can feel it. You can feel it. There's one diagram that I want to share with you, and I want to discuss this a little bit if you can. It's not
Please, please.
it's not probably one that you're thinking, but I shared this with all of my friends, and they all got a good laugh out of it.
Oh dear.
It's this one here.
Do I need it?
Do I
Oh,
need it? Yes, no. So it's like buying gear. So, do I need it? Yes. Will it improve quality, improve productivity, expand services? If the answer is no, then go do something else. If the answer is yes, get it. And I was
no, it's
laughing,
very, thanks. It's
I
very
was
simple though, isn't it?
laughing with my friends because I'm like, I feel like I have this conversation with myself every day. And I'm not sure if that's a common feeling for other people. I think it is.
Or the biggest one I get with gear questions, if you get people asking about pieces of gear, is when, and I get these all the time, and just
I'm sure you do.
feel free to ask me questions. I will, if I have time, I'll answer. I just don't always do. Sometimes I open up Instagram and I'm being DM'd by 40 people, and 39 of them are very easy to answer question. And one of the questions is just so long-winded, I put it off and then I try to answer it. Two things before I get started on this answer. I never have opinions on gear I've never used. You'll never hear me say the phrase, which I've heard many times, and so have you, I'm sure. I heard that. No, no hearsay. Um, the last time the 5,000 times, I should say, that I've heard the phrase "I heard that." 4,999 times they've been completely wrong. It's always like I heard that. Like people have said that to me about albums I have made that they heard it was done in a different way, and I'm like, okay, it's like
It's like truth in refraction, like through different channels, it turns into something completely different.
yeah, a game of whispers.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I've heard.
Okay, yeah. And it's funny you say that about like you're honest. I'm actually in the process of like hunting down a new interface, which I mean, I'm always looking for something new. But I just watched a video of yours yesterday, actually, just like
Before you tell me any more, what interface do you currently have?
you won't guess it. I have what's called a Roland Octocapture.
Hmm. I mean, I used to love random stuff when I was a kid. I had tons of random stuff.
Yeah, no one ever has heard of this thing. I bought it. I don't know. It's great. Eight inputs, and it attaches to another eight inputs. So I have two of them, and now I've got 16 inputs, and it's great.
Right, yeah. It
Um,
probably sells a bazillion copies in Japan.
Honestly, like they don't make them anymore. They're probably
I
big
bet you when it
somewhere
was
else.
out, it was probably very successful in Japan. There's so much, like those ATM 55 Audio Technicas, you can't buy them, but they still sell them in Japan. But
Yeah.
everybody's like, oh, get one. I'm like, you have to order it from Japan.
So I'm
It's
happy.
weird how some of the stuff just doesn't come across. But yeah, I look at it, it looks great. It's got four inputs on the front, split between line and, probably a JFET input with a XLR in. Yeah,
And
looks great.
there's four on the front, four on the back. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
it's awesome. But I want I want to get more. So I'm like, what does Warren have to say? I'm curious to hear Warren's opinion. And you did this one video a couple years ago where you're like making a home studio, and they were talking about the Apollo. And you said, and I was like, this is my guy. This is my guy. You said, I've never used one. And I don't know any other, like most other people on YouTube would have said, "Oh, I just got it today. It's great." Like they would have buttered it up. You're like, "No, I've never used it. Tell me about it." And you were talking to someone from Sweetwater, I think maybe.
Oh my God, there's a guy I know who has just put out a plugin, which is fantastic, and I'm sure it's a wonderful plugin. And it's through somebody that is it's a big thing. YouTube, you probably notice everybody's doing plugins. It's so what it is like somebody who has like all of these different things that you can put together to create your own plugin, and they're getting YouTubers to do it. And I know the business model was started like 3 months ago, and the plugin came out 2 months ago. So this guy's had a whopping 1 month to do the plugin. I'm sure it's amazing, don't get me wrong. But in the video, it goes, guys, I've been developing this idea, this plugin now for about 3 years. And I'm like, dude, really?
No
You
way.
both know the guy that did this and but it's part of the marketing. Yeah. People look, I'm getting criticized for this kind of stuff as well. And it's okay. I don't, I get excited about certain pieces of equipment. And but my gig, I think, is to just try and find out who it's right for, because I try to do that. I think I really liked the Apollo's great, of course, because it comes with all the plugins, so you get all of that UAD stuff. And if you want all those UAD plugins and the simplistic kind of interfaces, great. I like the audience stuff. We talk a lot about it, and predominantly because the mic pre's sound great. It's really easy to use. Any idiot can use it. I'm an idiot. But most importantly, because whenever they've gone wrong, for anybody I've ever known, they deal with it. One of the things about equipment, and you know this, is things always go wrong. It doesn't matter who it's made by. It can be a handmade Rolls Royce from 19 whatever. Things go wrong. So
Right.
what you do is you lean on the company that made it, and how do they deal with you when it goes wrong? There was these one headphones, I loved them. They sounded so great. And two pairs went wrong within a month of each other.
Right.
And it wasn't a problem. I'd owned the headphones for 2 to 4 years. And so it was not a problem they went wrong. So we sent them back. We got a hold of the manufacturer. They were a German company, wonderful company. And they said, well, can you send them back to the American distributor? So we sent them back to the American distributor. And we took a bit of time, so it was a little annoying, but we got them back, and I'm super excited. I got my favorite headphones back. I plug them in, and they're wired out of phase. So, there's no center. left and right channel. Of course, first thing I did was check the jack and all that kind of stuff and see if there's anything easy to fix. But no, they'd just been wired out of phase. And the other pair weren't even passing audio. So just nothing worked. So I got one pair came back and wasn't working, and the other pair was wired out of phase. So I said to Eric, I was like, Eric, can you do me a favor? Because Eric had sent them out. So it was all under his name, under Eric Gonzalez. So I said to Eric, just write to them and tell them that one pair's out of phase and the other pair aren't working. And he's like, okay. So he sent them a nice kind of like, hey, thanks for sending it back. We just plugged them in. They're out, one's out of phase, one isn't working. Didn't hear anything for about 2 weeks. And when we did get a response, it was the rudest, most talked down to, because his name was Gonzalez. So it was probably just kind of like, oh, what do you know? Blah, blah, blah. It's so patronizing, so like rubbed me up the wrong way. And he hadn't said they were for me. And it was, I think at that point we had a baby YouTube channel. It was probably just more about the fact that, we were making some pretty big records and you think that he would treat us nicely. But then I thought to myself, that's not what it's about, is it? It shouldn't be about who I am. This is how this company, this distributor, treats a regular dude called Eric Gonzalez. So I wrote to the company in Germany and I said, love your headphones. I'll never support you guys, in a nicer way. That was the long. And I said, because any American that buys these and has to get them fixed is going to go through this kind of customer support or lack thereof. The guy wrote back because obviously he got chewed out from the company, but he still couldn't let it go. He was like, well, this is what we're going to do. You pay for them to be shipped back by FedEx. If, he wrote if in capital letters, if I did make a mistake, because he was the guy that fixed it, we will refund you the shipping and we'll pay for it to be shipped back.
Yeah, I mean,
I just never responded. And
yeah,
and if people ever ask me about those headphones, I just go blank. I don't talk crap about them. I just go blank.
yeah, and you know what? Like, and even you telling that story right now is a testament to your style. Like that, you're not. I don't need to know the name of the company. We don't need to talk bad about them. We're just telling a story.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating when you're buying gear and that's one of the risks, right? It's like, okay, what's the support going to be? Is it going to be functional? Like with my Roland interface, it's Roland. Like
Oh, I love it. Such a
Roland,
good
like my amp, I didn't realize that like everything I own is Roland,
katana or the Boss katana, do you?
right? And yeah, it's just incredible. And yeah,
JC, is it 120? What is it?
it's a JC50,
I
which
know
is
JC. Yeah, great amp.
yeah, I'm actually
It's like
wanting
the
to,
world's worst, best distortion. The distortion on it is so bad that it's good.
yeah, and you know what? It actually sounds really unique when I blend it with my like
Yeah,
dirt
exactly.
pedal. It's like, what is that tone? I'm like, I don't even know.
Yeah, you
But
hear it on its own and you try to play like classic rock on it. Everybody looks at you like that's the worst guitar
no,
sound.
yeah, but here's the thing I like about that, and
Also,
what
the best guitar sound because nobody else has it.
totally, and I think because it doesn't sound like a tube screamer, it doesn't sound like this. I'm not like going that direction, and it's actually allowed me to create my own style. So I think about that with gear too. It's like, yeah, you want to get what everyone else has, but like if you kind of work to the gear that you own, it'll kind of
Yeah,
create
yeah,
its own path
totally.
of least
No, you're
resistance.
100% right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You're better off having a limited amount of equipment and knowing how to use it inside and out than you are having everything that you possibly got and then spend half the day trying to figure out how to plug it in.
Yeah, so you're telling me I shouldn't go out and buy a new interface tonight. That's what you're saying. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
mean,
Kidding.
so I was beginning to answer the question and I went on one of my famous tangents, but your question was, about the gear. One of the biggest issues, probably a strong word, but I can't think of it. One of the biggest issues I think people face is that they're always looking at sideways moves. So one of
I
my
I
most
just
frequent answers to the
I
question.
just sorry, I just read this in the book last night. Go on. This is gold. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, how much was the Roland when it was new? $600?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Okay, so on the market at the moment, there's loads of really good $500 or $600 units. But why on earth would you want to buy another $500 or $600 unit? Wait until you could get something that was amazing that like lifted it up. Maybe it was 24 channel because you're going to start recording bands, or probably more importantly, just invest in something else you actually need. Because the reality is, there's nothing stopping you from making an amazing album with that piece of equipment. There's probably far more important things. But the sideways move is the one I get all the time. People say to me, I've got this $500 500 series mic pre, and I just read about this other $500 500 series mic pre. I think I should sell this one for $300 used and buy the other one for 500. And I'm like, why? They're like, well, because I heard that blah 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 used it on this record, and I'm like, yeah, but you've got to write that guy's song. You've got to get that acoustic guitar. You've got to play it that way, for it to be that different. That's not where you should be taking your money. But I might say, well, look, that maybe there is a step up. Maybe what you're looking for is something tube, something valve, something quite expensive, maybe a V series, kind of like a V72 or something like that. However, you're not going to get one at $500 because that sounds like what you need, sir, madam. Save your money. Keep that, save your money, buy what you actually need that will step up rather than doing these sideways things. But it happens all the time. I mean, I go on forums and I just read people fighting about the differences between these five different products that are all $300. And I just did this song with Fernando, and we did Perdomo, and we cut in less than a day, in about 3 hours, we cut a Beatles cover. And we used the Warm Audio WA19, their version of the D19, the Beatles mic. And we used it on everything. We used it on a kick, we used it as an overhead, put it on snare. We used it as the bass guitar mic. We used it as guitar mic, electric guitar mic, vocal mic, you name it. Just put it on everything. And it wasn't the mic. It wasn't anything that stopped it sounding good. It sounded really good. And he was using a Fostex. I think it's a 16 channel desk that has an interface built into it. That's like
Love it.
$2,000. You
Love
know
it.
that one?
Love
And I
it.
think the EQ is treble middle bass. Might even be treble bass, but probably treble middle bass. I don't think it's semi parametric. I think it's parametric. I think it's anything fancy at all. So we use like a cheap interface with an inexpensive microphone. And the differentiator was the song was really good because it was a Beatles song, and all of the musicians involved were really wonderful musicians. Steve sung it, and he's a great singer, Steve Majora, and that was the differentiator. So it's a tough one. I think one of the two criticisms I always face are, number one, I'm a workaholic. Get that all the time. Everybody's ever worked for me, I have to be honest, can't keep up. I start before them and work after them, and they're like, "You work such long hours," and I'm just like, "Well, I'm blessed to be able to do what I love."
What you love. So it's like easy. It's either easy lifting.
Yeah, but it is also really hard work at
Yeah.
times, just
Yeah.
many, many times. Um, but I'm blessed to be able to do it, and I also don't take anything for granted. I also grew up quite poor, to say the least, and so for me, I got the nice accent from the poor in the wealthy area, which is always comical. But the thing about it is like I'm always expecting the other shoe to drop. So if I don't have a new idea, or I'm not trying something else, I'm not developing something, then I feel like, oh, so I always work really super hard. And a lot of the kids that have come to work for me over the years that maybe came from wealthier families don't really fully understand that. And that's okay. But I didn't have that. I didn't have that safety net to fall back on. And like, it's okay. I don't begrudge anybody having wealthier parents than my parents. It's absolutely fine. It's not a differentiator that is a negative, but it does mean I work super hard. And then I suppose the other criticism is a little bit more interesting, because people say, I'll record something with the inexpensive mic and the inexpensive interface, which I've done thousands of times, and then I'll give the multi-tracks. And some people say, Warren, these tracks sound really good. I don't have to do much to mix them to make them sound good. And I'm just thinking, well, that's why we're called Produce Like a Pro. It's everything is mixed with the mix. Mix this, mix that, produce the mix, mix the mix, mix the mix, 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 mix. And I grew up in a time, and the music that everybody is saying is the greatest music of all time, still to this day, was all recorded like the way you heard it. If there was any EQ or compression or anything applied, it was on the way in.
Hmm.
And you get some of these amazing records and you pull them up on fader, and they sound 99.9% of the way there. If I'm not saying that I do have the Bohemian Rhapsody multi-tracks, I can neither confirm or deny that I do. But if I maybe did, maybe you just pull them all up and you're like, wow, that's the record. You know why? Because Queen were phenomenal musicians, incredible writers, and their engineer was insanely talented, and their producer was insanely talented, and they were in great rooms with great gear. But it all started with Song, musicians, gear, engineer, blah, 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 all in that order. The song with the musicians first, the arrangement, all of those things came first. So, I think the lesson is we're looking, not you're asking this question specifically, but, we're always looking for the mix or the gear to solve the problem. There's lots of other things in there, getting great songs, great performances, and then knowing where to put the mic in the
Yeah.
right place.
Oh,
Um,
and I think that's why people like watch your stuff. It's like there's always more to learn. And I think there's a great quote that comes to mind when I think of your work. It's like when you've climbed the mountain, the first thing you should do is put down the rope,
yeah, yeah.
right? And like help other people up. And I think like that's a testament to everything that you're doing. And so just like honestly, everything you're doing is so amazing. Even myself, like I only got into production in the last like say half decade. And in watching your videos and learning, obviously, like I'm not just watching your videos and now I can do it. Like you definitely helped. And to the point that I like have a professional job in production. And so a lot of it is a testament to like your work. So I on a personal level, I want to say thank you.
Well, that means a lot. We've been blessed. We've been blessed. We've had quite a few people over the years. We actually about 4 or 5 years ago, we had somebody win Emmys for all the recording stuff, and they wrote us a great testimonial. Um, I've personally had four assistants who have assisted me go off and become Grammy winners, um, and come up underneath, assisting engineering, and a couple of them ended up co-producing stuff with me and then went off and won Grammys. To me, it's like I always use that Segovia quote, which I've, messed around with over the years and but fumbled it quite badly. But he made a statement of all my best students gave up. And people are like, huh? Which is fine because it is a little strange. What he's saying is like, if it comes to you too easily, quite often they give up. And I knew that growing up because when I grew up, as a child, I wanted a guitar. And I did get a guitar. I got a guitar that my father and I built together. Predominantly my father, of course, he was a very skilled craftsman. So he built this guitar with a little bit of help from me. Yes, I wanted to be Brian May, which is exactly what Brian did with his father. But also, we didn't have money to buy a decent guitar. When I was a little kid in the 80s, you go into a music store. Maybe people watching this will remember this. And there was Fender and Gibson, but there wasn't much else. There was other guitars, and most of the quote unquote affordable guitars, entry ones, were like cheese graters. They had actions like this. They were really bad. They buzzed, they clicked, they didn't sound very good. There was very few people that made affordable, great guitars. Just one of my personal affinities with Yamaha guitars and why I've always been a big fan because pre-Ibanez in Britain, Yamaha made affordable guitars. And you'll notice a lot of really cool indie bands had Yamaha guitars and basses. Obviously, Joy Division, New Order were very famous for Peter Hook playing I think it was a BB 400, which was pretty much what any kid could buy for saving their pocket money for several months. It wasn't a P bass, it wasn't a jazz bass, which we all wanted. It was probably a quarter of the price, maybe even less, but it played good. It sounded great, and it recorded some of the most famous bass lines of all time. And That Will Tear Me Up, That Will Tear Us Apart Again is one of the most classic bass lines of all time, and it's an affordable bass. So I've always gravitated towards gear that's affordable. I've always gravitated towards this idea of it's the song, it's the artist, and the art. Another thing that really isn't talked about so much music education of like, about Mixolydian, Phrygian, blah, 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 all of which, frankly, I understand. I can read and write music. I know all my modes. I am very schooled in many ways because I worked really hard at it. But everybody I've ever asked about writing, Jacob Collier, when I asked him about music theory, he's like, never use it when I'm writing, just write.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this
It's not,
is one of the things, this sort of like predication for like putting so much emphasis on the gear and on being cleverer than everybody else when really the people we admire, like Bob Marley, like I said, Redemption Song. I mean, I rest my case. I mean, it's a slightly out of tune, fretting out, buzzy guitar. But, if you don't want to cry after that, hearing that song for the first time, you may not have a pulse.
absolutely.
It,
Absolutely.
that kind of stuff. And then equally, Bohemian Rhapsody. absolute masterpiece, you know. But there's not a PhD in music in there. There's PhDs in that band, Brian May very famously, but not in music, you know. It was just they're definitely very, very smart cookies. But Freddie, of course, you know, was somebody who grew up through so much strife. I mean, you know, his family had to relocate twice because of religious persecution. Ended up in Britain where he'd been educated in English schools in Zanzibar, so he had quite a posh sounding English accent. But they came there penniless and started all over again. And you know, and then of course he comes out as gay. And you know, talk about all the things stacked against him, but he's Freddie Mercury. I mean, who would argue that he might well be the greatest rock singer that ever lived? I mean, definitely performer, let alone singer, you know. So you know, I like that's where we come from. It's like, how can we? Somebody asked me about Produce Like a Pro Academy. You touched on it earlier. We started that place, the Academy, to have a playground where all of the other kids like us can go and meet, rather than kind of a place where you come in and you're like, so, you know, I'm better than you. I'm
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I didn't have friends like that. I had a couple of friends, and we were all nerds. You know, we all love guitars and music and I don't know, Monty Python or whatever. You know what I mean? Silly things. We were
Totally, totally.
bit bookish, a bit shy, as much as I'm talking now. Shy and wasn't very good with girls. You know, it wasn't. You know what I mean? I just like it's just a nerdy little kid, and I was happy about it. And then so I thought, start Produce Like a Pro and do the same thing. Have a nerdy place where you get to hang out and be with other people that love music.
And I find too with that is like I have the same thing with my show where it doesn't matter who the guest is, if I've met them, if I've never met them, you sit in the same room with them or you go online with them, and it's like you're already on the same wavelength. Like you're a music lover. There's like the ego is not around, and you can just like chat music. And this is honestly like my favorite hour of the week. Like the whole world disappears, and it's just music, just learning and honestly like this has been such a treat. I know we only scratched the surface on so many different topics. I had a whole list of questions and we got through most of it, but like, I just want to thank you for all of your
You
experience,
one last one. You
all
got
of
a
your
burning desire.
stories.
What would be of the remaining question or questions? What is it? What is it you wanted to ask?
Okay, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
If I'm going to Crookham Village, what should I check out?
Oh wow, it's been a while since I drove through there maybe a year or two ago, but you know, there was always great pubs there. It's like, you know, it's different. When I was a kid in the 80s, pub food was the worst. It was like
Really?
really now, like all the pubs in Britain are like gourmet restaurants. It's insane how well you can eat. So I think I would probably just say in the village itself, yeah, the Black Horse, um, go in, order some. I think it's still called the Black Horse. Order some lunch. If you drink, have a pint
Definitely
and
will. Have one.
have a pint and have something to eat and just like yeah. I mean, it's a fairly quiet life. It wasn't as rural as some of the villages around. There's a big town called Fleet there, and I used to work at a music store there called Kingfisher. And then, of course, quite well known to many people, I used to work at Anderton's as well. And Lee Anderton's,
Great,
an
great
awesome.
spot. Yeah, I can't wait to go there one day. Yeah.
Yeah, go there. You'll love it.
And that, I did have one more question, but I'll make this one really quick if you can make a quick answer to it. Um, you have a quote or a catchphrase. He's big, he's bad, he's back. How important is a good catchphrase?
Oh, I don't know. You see, the marvelous thing, for instance, was a total accident.
I hope you're
So
doing marvelously well. Yes.
yeah, I think I did three videos in a row, and I used it two of the three times, or all three of the times. But so video number four, and I probably had at that point three people, maybe had like 200 views and three comments, five comments per video. And on video number four, I went, "Hi everybody, I hope you're doing well. Just wanted to talk about blah 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 today and blah 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 blah." And the first comment was like, "Warren, you didn't say your catchphrase." And I was like, "Huh?" And they're like, "You didn't say marvelously well." I'd said marvelously well three times out of four. And so it became a catchphrase without it being me knowing that it was a catchphrase. It was definitely not deliberate.
Well, it's done you well. I'm waiting for the t-shirt. Warren, thank you so so much for taking the time today, this evening. And for those that don't know, Warren, Produce Like a Pro, uh, grab the book, go check it out, go watch some videos, give him a like and sub. And what the work he's doing is
Put a link to the book down there somewhere.
the link, it'll be here. Warren, you're the man. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you. It was really great to connect with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.